Hi everybody, today is Friday, January 3rd, and our friend Ray McGovern is back with us. I'm joining you from my studio, but we have some sort of problems. That's why I'm joining you on my cell phone. Welcome back, Ray.
Thank you, Nima, and Happy New Year once again.
Happy New Year to you. Ray, let's get started with the situation in Gaza. And because with all the difficulties that we are witnessing right now in Syria, with Hezbollah and Turkey, Israel, all of that. But the main goal, the main reason of all these difficulties that we have been talking about for more than a year is the situation in Gaza. How do you find it right now?
Well, Nima, it's hard to even address. I've never seen the like of it. I was alive during World War II, all of it, and I heard about genocide. I believe historical accounts of genocide, not only in Germany against the Jews, but in Armenia and so forth. But this is genocide enabled, made made possible by my own government, United States of America, doing Israel's bidding. And so this really hurts, okay? Now, I'm a person of faith, as you know. I come out of a Judeo Christian tradition. And this is the time when, after Jesus' birth and the story of Bethlehem and so forth, we have something that seems to be actually historical, and that is King Herod doing the bidding of the Roman Empire, decided that since there was a threat he had learned of, this baby that was born in Bethlehem, that all kinds of people knew about, including some people from the East, well, he was supposed to change things. He was supposed to challenge the empire. My God. And so what he did was what all exceptional or indispensable or empire first people do. He decided, well, here's one way to do it. Let's kill all the babies. Let's kill all the babies 2 and younger just to make sure we got them all. The male babies, because this person is supposed to be a male. And then I can rest easy. I can report back to Rome. No threat to you or to me. We got the babies killed. It's always been a horrible, horrible tale. I believe that the Bible is inspired. I don't think you can take it literally in many respects. But as I say, there's some historical foundation for what we in the Christian church call the slaughter of the innocents being the babies. And so I think as the new year dawns, in my view, we need to be cognizant of what is happening, what people are doing, and what people are not doing. I'm very active now, belatedly, with a group called Physicians or Doctors Against Genocide, mostly American Palestinian doctors, the ones that survived service there in Gaza over the last year or so, have come back and told terrible, terrible stories about what they witnessed, how they tried to heal these people, how they held children's brains in their hands. Children have been shot by snipers in the head or in the chest. So without further ado, I just think that these unspeakable things can be only spoken in poetry. And I came across a poem that speaks volumes, literally. Vijay Prashad, a former professor at Tufts University, if memory serves, who left his tenured position to serve the world as head of the Tricontinental outfit. He sent the thing around yesterday. I'd like to quote from it because he in turn quotes from a British poet named Michael Rosen. And Michael Rosen responded to the current day slaughter of the innocents with the following words. It's not very long. The name of the poem is Don't Mention the Children. Well, I think we need to. Here it goes. Don't mention the children. Don't name the dead children. The people must not know the names of the dead children. The names of the children must be hidden. The children's must be nameless. The children must leave this world having no names. No one must know the names of the dead children. No one must say the names of the dead children. No one must even think that the children have names. People must understand it would be dangerous to know the names of the children. The people must be protected from knowing the names of the children. The names of the children could spread like wildfire. The people would not be safe if they knew the names of the children. Don't name the dead children. Don't remember the dead children. Don't even think of the dead children. Don't say dead children. Period. End. Well, I'm going to say the dead children. I would appeal for people to get in touch with the Doctors Against Genocide. They're based in Michigan. They're doing great work. Several of them have been killed, and one very prominent one, head of the hospital that was just set afire, is in captivity. Nobody knows where he is. So that's where we are at the break of day, so to speak, at the break of the year. And that is what I consider to be the most urgent moral problem with respect to what will happen. Will Trump regime act like an empire that puts America and, not incidentally, Israel first? Will he consider himself exceptional and indispensable, like Biden bragged about being, according to the scripture of Madeleine Albright? And I'll just close with this. This is not new. This is not new about dead children. Now, back 25 years ago, we did not mention the names of the dead children, but we know that there were 500,000 dead children as a result of our sanctions against Iraq. And when our former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, was asked on camera, my God, Madam Secretary, 500,000 children, do you think killing 500,000 children because of the sanctions, do you think it's worth it? And she said without batting an eye, yes, we think it's worth it. Well, it's not worth it. And it's up to us people who care about children to stop it. And we'll have to do more than just talk about, last thing, here's the doctors in our country. Oh, what are they doing? Well, they're healing people. That's great. They're doing no harm. That's great too. But that's not enough, okay? Now, when I studied moral theology, ethics, most people call it, the professor came in, he was their Jesuit priest, and he said, now look, this is pretty simple. We are called to do good and avoid evil. And I've since learned that's only half right. That's only half right. We're called to do good. We're called to do no harm, as doctors are called. But we're not called to avoid evil. We're called to confront evil. And so I just hope that people listening will join me and you and make this a different year. Make this a year that we speak out, not to avoid evil, but to confront it. And what could be more evil than killing a whole bunch of little children? Thanks for letting me rant like that. It's not a rant. It's just, I think it comes from the heart. And I think most people Most people think that what we're doing to children is dead wrong. What I encourage us to do is not to avoid evil or do no harm, but maybe get out there and do some harm, some moral harm to the people responsible for this before all 2 million Palestinians, including 1 million or more children, are dead.
Ray, how do you see the situation with the case of Shamsuddin Jabbar in the New Orleans attack? And they're trying to connect him with ISIS, with Daesh. And what's your take on that? I know that you're not interested in domestic policies, but after all, it seems to me that they're connecting it to ISIS and Daesh. I don't know what would be the main reason for that.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that this Al Qaeda type banner or flag appeared in one of those trucks or something. You know, I haven't really looked into it very closely, but I have to say that the FBI seems to be waffling. To rely on the FBI to come up with an honest answer to these things is maybe these days to expect too much. And let me just mention, in connection with the FBI, that there is a battle royale going on right now to prevent Kash Patel from becoming director of the FBI. Why? Because Kash Patel knows the FBI. He investigated the FBI when he was a member of the House Intelligence Committee. He's a former prosecutor and investigator. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows who the people are that tried to prevent Trump from winning the first time and did everything they could to sabotage him from creating, for example, a decent relationship with Russia the first time during those first 4 years. He knows who invented Russiagate. He knows about Jake Sullivan. He knows about Tony Blinken and their roles in helping Biden win in 2020. So are they afraid of him? My God, they're doing everything they can to blacken him, to slander him, to make sure that he's not confirmed. It remains to be seen if Trump can stand up to this pressure, because the first time around, he couldn't, and he gave in. He didn't know what Washington was like. He was from New York, a real estate guy. He didn't know the internecine kind of conquests that go on within Washington and the swamp. So this time, does he know? Yeah, he does know. Does he know chapter and verse? Well, if Kash Patel comes in and Tulsi Gabbard, well, they will tell him chapter and verse to the degree he doesn't already know. And that's why these people are deathly afraid of vindictiveness. After all, when they have the book on these people, are they going to be nice? There's nothing to indicate that Kash Patel or new president-elect Trump will be nice. So the FBI needs to be reformed, in my view, just like the CIA. It needs to be changed up and down, turned around, and made to be the institutions that they were cut out to be, not the ones that J. Edgar Hoover or Allen Dulles fashioned into instruments of the system.
Ray, shifting the gear to the conflict in Ukraine, how do you see the current phase of the conflict? Does NATO want to change its policy in Ukraine, or they can go after some sort of policy that sacrifices Slovakia, Romania, and all of these countries because of, I don't know, Donald Trump and Keith Kellogg are talking about the same old policies that we've witnessed from the Biden administration. Do you see any sort of change coming?
Well, Nima, you asked the right question, as usual. We are in the pre-negotiating period. That is, people are going to voice their maximal demands. They're going to say whatever they think their maximal demands will be going into talks. Okay. Now, are Putin's terms an ultimatum? Most people are saying they are. I say, let's wait and see. Okay. One big factor, of course, perhaps the most important factor, is that one of the key players is, by definition, unpredictable. That happens to be Mr. Trump. It's very hard to foresee what he'll be willing to do to meet Putin's terms. He's not going to meet all of them. So he's stating his terms in a maximalist way through Kellogg and other leaks like that. But it remains to be seen what Putin's going to do. His options, that is, Trump's options, are very limited. The other pervasive reality here is that Russia is winning. I mean, we've been saying that for a long time, despite the head of the CIA saying, oh, no, they already lost. And he said that a year and a half ago. Okay, no, Russia has already lost. Give me a break, okay? So what is Trump being told? Well, that depends on whether Tulsi Gabbard is telling him the truth right now, even though she's not confirmed. And if she's telling him, look, Mr. Trump, this should never have happened. Just as you have often said, this wouldn't have happened under your watch. Why? Because even Obama admitted that the worst thing you could do for the Ukrainians would be to give them the idea that they could prevail militarily against a much stronger Russia on their border. Now, Obama made that stick. He wouldn't give them offensive weaponry. Well, Biden comes in and Blinken and Sullivan whisper in his ear, hey, have you forgotten? We're exceptional. We're indispensable. We can do what we want, and the Russians will fall apart if we just stand firm. And so they gave offensive weapons to Ukraine. What did it do? Just prolonged the agony. So that's the other reality that pervades this. The Russians have already, I think they may have taken Pokrovsk as we speak. They've advanced all along that 1,000-kilometer line from Novorossiya and Lugansk and Donetsk. So it's inevitable that they have the capability to go all the way to the Dnieper River. Will they take Kiev? That's up for negotiation. We had a recent paper by Dimitri Trenin, who was very close to Russian leadership, who said, look, we don't want it all. We certainly don't want Western Ukraine. My God, that would be a Vietnam for us. We'd have to cope with insurgency. Those people don't like us, he says, okay? And so what do we do? Well, we bargain. And he was, now this may not be Kremlin policy, but he's an important person. He says, now, do we want Odessa or Kharkov or Nikolaev or Dnipropetrovsk? We don't want all of them, says Trenin. We just want what will make us strategically secure. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that's really premature to figure out what's going to happen, since we don't know. Putin does. Nobody knows. Maybe even Melania doesn't know what Trump is going to do here. Okay, and much less any of his cohorts. And he may not know what he's going to do, but he's going to be faced with cold reality. The Russians have won in Ukraine. He's on record as saying this was really a stupid thing. More recently, he's on record as saying sending longer-range missiles into Russia proper is foolish. Why are they doing this? What kind of thing are they trying to do? So he has enough reason now to claim that this wasn't his fault. And as long as something reasonable can be worked out, he can brag. That is, Trump can brag. I think I've said this before. I mean, this is more than rhetoric, because American citizens believe this. They believe that when the president says Putin won't stop at Ukraine, he'll go on, Poland is next. and then the Baltic states are next. Okay. To the extent that people believe this, well, Trump is quite willing and able to say, I talked to my friend Vlad Putin, and I told him, hands off Poland, hands off the Baltic states, and we don't want you to take all of Ukraine. So he said, okay. Now, of course, the reality is they have no idea that he has no intention of doing that. Okay? Not even the whole of Ukraine. So there's plenty of latitude there to work out a deal. And unlike most of my colleagues who kind of focus on the ultimatum that Putin has made, I focus too on the supreme reality that Ukraine will never become part of NATO. Okay? But then I ask myself, hey, McGovern, think out of the box. What's NATO going to look like in a couple of years? God, it's already falling apart. Okay? What's Ukraine going to look like in a couple of years? Well, probably, I'd guess, divided in two. So if they agree on all these other things and agree on sort of a cordon sanitaire where you have a DMZ equivalent where the Russian forces and the Western forces can be separated at a convenient distance, then if Trump says, and we don't want what's left of Ukraine on the eastern side to join NATO for 10 years, then Putin will say, well, I don't know what NATO is going to look like in 10 years, but I still don't like it. Mr. Trump, how about 50 years? Trump says, 35 years. Deal. I mean, what's it going to happen? What's it going to look like in 35 years? And I think Putin's condition would be we revisit the question of Ukraine and NATO in 35 years, okay? It's not that automatically Ukraine or what's left of it, even the part west of the Dnieper will become a member of NATO even in 35 years. So what I'm saying here is there's a lot of latitude here. I'm going to mention one more time because I mentioned it first on your program 2 years ago. In October 2022, Putin said, Odessa, such a beautiful, beautiful city, Catherine the Great. Oh, well, Odessa is special, okay? Now, it could be, a яблоко раздора. It could be an apple of discord. That's back to the Trojan War, okay? It could be an apple of discord, or it could be a way of joining together to prevent worse from happening, to negotiate. And nobody took them up on that. It was the end of a question and answer period that lasted 4 hours. I don't think American specialists in Russia ever told the president about that. But they need to tell Trump now, because that, in my view, 2 years ago, October of 22, more than 2 years ago, that little яблоко, that little apple was thrown out there, and it didn't need to be раздора. It didn't mean to be a discord. There are hopes, and I'm an outlier on this. There are hopes, and I take some hope from Dimitri Trenin's article, that they don't want it all, and there would be room for negotiation on even things like Odessa being the key for a rump Ukraine to be an independent country and have commerce and outlet to the sea and so forth, and not just be a farm for the rest of Europe.
Ray, you talk about Europe. How do you find Europe today? Because of this, Ukraine doesn't want to let Russian gas go into Europe, to Slovakia and other countries. On the other hand, you see Sikorsky, the foreign minister of Poland, is bragging about the way that Ukraine is capable of doing this. What's going on in Europe?
Well, I hate to quote Donald Rumsfeld, but there's an old Europe and a new Europe. And the new Europe is really kind of gloating about what's going to happen now that the Russians can't sell gas through Ukraine. Does that represent a major segment of Russian gas sales. I think the figure is maybe 5%, if that. All of their gas go to China, India. It's all being redirected, has been already. So the Russian losses here are going to be very, very minimal. Who's going to suffer? Old Europe as well as New Europe, okay? I'm talking about the French and the Germans, okay? And especially the people like Hungary and Slovakia and Romania. So how do you explain what Zelensky did? And let's not quote the London Times and say Russia cut off the gas through Ukraine. Well, all right, yeah, they did, because Ukraine wouldn't renew the contract, and Putin himself got up 2 weeks before and said, "Look, I don't understand this, but this is the reality. You should understand that it's not we're going to cut off this. It's Zelensky, and we don't know why, but he's going to do it. And when he does it, it's going to be cut off because we will not proceed without a contract." And that's what happened. So what Zelensky has in mind, I don't know. But the worrying thing is, would he do this without without U.S. connivance? Do the UK and the US really want to hurt Europe this badly just to sell more liquefied natural gas to them? There's no rhyme or reason to this, because Zelensky himself is going to suffer from this. There'll be more dissolution of NATO. The people in Slovakia really resent the backbiting or the gloating, as you said before, by people like the Poles and Sikorsky and all these other people who seem to have a certain Schadenfreude, the German word for taking delight at the misfortune of others. They seem to be taking delight in this. And this is another symptom, I would suggest, that NATO is not long for this world. And when Trump comes in, unpredictable as he is, and the many things he has said about NATO that he has said, NATO is not going to be around for more than a couple more years, I think. I'm an outlier on that as well, because there are vested interests that will try to keep it going. But it will not be as functional. It will be even more dysfunctional, let me put it that way, than it has been up till now.
Ray, don't you think that Donald Trump's presidency would be an opportunity for the European Union or European countries to be more independent than before?
That's a hard one. I've been alive more than 80 years, but it's been 80 years since the war ended. The war, World War II, that was the reality, the pervasive reality as I was young, very young, but also the first time I went to Europe with some of my colleagues for 3 months during the summer. That was 1959, 14 years after the war. Munich was in ruins. Many of the other cities were still in ruins. We were welcomed as benefactors. We were given free coffee, to the degree there was coffee in those days. In other words, it was a very different situation from the one that is now. If you fast forward to now, we have a Europe that never grew up. After the war, you could understand why the Europeans, and particularly the Germans, so beholden to the Marshall Plan and other things, would take their cues from the U.S. and act like infants, like children, And then Willy Brandt came in Germany, and said, well, we're going to grow up, we're going to face the Russians down in Berlin, and we're going to do our own thing, and we're going to have Ostpolitik, East policy, that does a respectful and a easy relationship with Russia. Oh, wow. What did that do? That enabled a whole bunch of things. So that was adolescence, He had grown up. Now, have they become adults? They have not. Witness the fact that their main source of cheap gas, to go back to the gas situation, was the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. Both exploded, blown up by the CIA. I say again, completely clear by the CIA at the behest of not only the head of the CIA, but the head of our government, Joe Biden. That's clear. Now, what happened when Joe Biden threatened to do precisely that months before it happened? He said, if Ukraine is invaded by Russia, well, there will be no Nord Stream pipeline. And the very, very articulate and clever bilingual Reuters woman said, how can you say that, Mr. President? You're not in control of the Nord Stream pipeline. And he said, there will be no Nord Stream pipeline. And then Chancellor Scholz was at the next podium. He was in Washington at the time. And so she said, was halten Sie davon, Herr Kanzler? What do you think about that? And he said, he gulped, and he said, we do everything together. Together, we do everything together. Okay, so that's the only thing I could think of. Now, here's proof positive that the German people have not grown up. They have not learned how to act as adults. Because what's the question here? Did Biden tell Chancellor Scholz, this is what we're going to do? We're going to blow up your pipelines? And did Scholz still say, we do everything together? So did they do it together? Or was it wait till the following September when the pipelines were blown up? And was that the first time Olaf Scholz learned about the breakup of the pipeline? I don't know, but either is just so damnable. And the fact that the German populace has not really seen Seymour Hersh's detailed chronology of how all this was done. Seymour Hersh being the most distinguished, still alive investigative reporter the United States has ever seen. Okay, he lays it out in chapter and verse. The German people don't know that. The German, get this, Nima, this is hard to believe. The German media is worse than the American media. They're just a little bit behind the UK media. So if people don't know what's going on, it's hard for them to be challenged to grow up. And I've been warned. You don't make any friends in Germany, Ray, if you call them adolescents. Well, you know, I'll just say one more thing on this. There was a young German lawyer who was training to be a judge. He was in Berlin in early 1933. And he described the situation there when just because the Reichstag Parliament burned down, everybody blamed the communists, okay? And they had a communist that they accused of doing it, still not known if he did or not. But after then, everything was permitted, you know. Your desk could be entered into, your conversations monitored. If you bought a left-wing newspaper, you would be on a list. And this person, his real name was Raimund Pretzel. I think I have his book here somewhere. I used to have it right here, but the name in German is Die Geschichte eines Deutschen, the story of a German person. It's in English. It's Sebastian Hafner is his pen name. Anyhow, the German words used to describe the German reaction to all this, that is the imposition of a dictatorship of the Third Reich before Hitler had a majority in parliament. They talk about schlafliche Ergebenheit, sheepish submissiveness. Now, the German people right now are not far away from the sheepish submissiveness that they have shown since 80 years ago, okay? They need to snap out of it, okay? And there's a chance they will now, because their economy is falling apart as we speak. They are being deindustrialized, and in large part because Herr Kanzler Scholz said nothing, apparently, when President Biden said, we're going to we're going to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. I hope you don't mind. I mean, give me a break. Have the Germans not asked Scholz about that? There is an election coming up in Germany, and apparently the forerunner now, the election I think is on February 23. The forerunner is a fellow named Merz, and he's a Christian Democrat. Now, Christian Democrat used to mean something. It doesn't mean much anymore because Merz really wants to send Taurus missiles deeper into Russia. Now, Taurus has a range almost twice the length of the ATACMS, okay? Now, if he campaigns on that platform, we're going to really show these Russians, show them a lesson, okay? And he wins, my God, that's the end of Germany as we know it, because next year they're going to have U.S. intermediate range missiles emplaced in Germany by bilateral agreement between Biden and Scholz. It's right there on paper, apart from NATO, and the situation will be back to the perilous situation that existed in the mid-'80s before the treaty, the Intermediate Range Forces Treaty, which was agreed to by Gorbachev and Reagan. It was Gorbachev's idea, agreed to in 1987. And who got out of that treaty? Trump. 2019, his last year in office, last month in office, he bowed to the military-industrial complex and the warriors in the Pentagon and at STRATCOM, Strategic Command, who said, yeah, this would be really good. We can have an advantage over Russia if we have intermediate range ballistic missiles there again, just like we did back in the 80s. Now, the new element here, of course, is called Oreshnik, which means hazelnut tree, and the Oreshnik is a game changer. I'm not a technical person, but part of my job as a intelligence community representative, that is not just CIA, but the whole community, was to find the scientists, the engineers that I could trust, that would not tell me what they thought I wanted to hear, okay? Now, Ted Postal is one of those, and he still serves that very good function for me. But I've listened to them all, Ted Postal and all the others. And Oreshnik, in my view, is clearly a game changer. And Putin is not exaggerating when he says, look, we have a couple of these now. We're going to have more. We're mass producing them. And that changes the game because it no longer is necessary for Russia to have a nuclear deterrent. If there's any sense in the West, this Oreshnik will be enough deterrent to persuade them that they are at a disadvantage now. And I've been watching this for half a century, right? Never before have I seen Russian weaponry excel in efficiency and accuracy. U.S. weaponry. U.S. continues to build F-35s at the tune of $300 million a year, and they don't really work real well, okay? Half of them are being repaired as we speak. So we chose the wrong things because the military-industrial complex thought there's a lot more money in F-35s than there was in 155 millimeter shells or something that Ukraine could have been found useful. So it's really an exciting time. I hope you catch my enthusiasm here because our job will be to analyze what's going on, to figure out the unpredictable Trump versus the very predictable Putin. And I have to say, we're talking about Men of the Year or Person of the Year. After 25 years, where he brought Russia out of shambles to the very modern and the very well-equipped military force that it is in today's world, and cultivated relationships with China that won't quit. I mean, this man Putin has made a tectonic shift in the correlation of forces. It's 2 against 1 now. And Trump needs to be told that, because Biden was never told that. Blinken and Sullivan told him, no, you can play China off against Russia. You could get Chinese to persuade the Russians to stop. I mean, these people were not really compass mentis. And if we get by these next 2.5 weeks, I'll be very happy and relieved. And God knows what will happen after that. But maybe even God doesn't know what Trump's going to do.
Ray, as you mentioned, the relationship between China and Russia has improved a lot during this conflict. We are approaching 3 years of the conflict in Ukraine. And right now we know that on January 20th, hours before Donald Trump takes office in the United States, there's going to be a comprehensive agreement between Russia and Iran. Here comes the question, what would be the policy of the Trump administration? Are they going to go with the same sort of policy of confrontation, more chaos, or they're going to find a political solution? They're going to go after some sort of diplomacy. Do you see the potential of having diplomacy in the coming administration?
Well, Nima, and now I must say, as the Germans put it, jetzt bin ich überfragt. Now I am over-asked. No, you've just asked me to predict Trump, and I've told you he's unpredictable, okay? So with that caveat aside, a sensible person, Trump, should realize that China is no threat to the United States, to anybody. China has 4 millennia behind it of trying to piece together and make prosperous now over what, a billion 3 people, okay? Was it 100 billion or so? Yeah. So 100 million, whatever it is, it's a lot of people, right? Now, if Trump doesn't realize that there's a lot of sense in the way the Chinese approach these things, and the way they approach it is simply, look, have you heard of let's get along? I mean, have you heard of win-win? I mean, we don't need anything from you. We like to sell to you and so forth, right? We like to lend to you, but we're quite capable, and we have lifted the bulk of our population out of poverty within the last 10 years. We're doing just fine internally. We just don't want to be harassed along our lines of supply there in the East China Sea and so forth, okay? Can't you just relent? You once recognized that Taiwan was part of China. Why don't you go back to that policy and stop selling arms to Taiwan just because it's such a lucrative business, okay? We can deal, okay? Let's live and let live. Now, what would that mean? Well, that would mean good news for the world, bad news, very bad news for the military, industrial, congressional, intelligence, media complex. The media being just part of this military industrial complex and just serving their needs. So China is a big threat in the media. It's not a threat in reality. It used to be a threat to Russia, of all places. And now Russia and China, largely because of U.S. mistaken policy, have banded together as never, ever before. They are allies. Well, I was going to say in all but name. Putin has recently taken to saying China is our ally, okay? Now, they insist this isn't directed at anybody else. I mean, this is just friendship and so forth. And they don't call it a mutual defense treaty. But on the 4th of February 2022, when Putin was up in Beijing to initiate the Winter Olympics there, they had a discussion about Ukraine. And it's very clear to me, it wasn't so clear initially, but it's very clear to me that when Xi said, "Look, Comrade Vladimir, if you have to do what you have to do. Okay, we don't like violating borders. Our sacrosanct principle is Westphalia. Okay, no borders are inviolate. You don't invade other countries. But look, we see what your situation is. Just don't do it before the Olympics are over." Olympics were over on the 20th of February. It was done on the 24th or 22nd or whatever it was of February 2022. So why am I saying that? I was reluctant to believe, and I confess this, okay? I've gone to confession about this, okay? I was reluctant to believe that the Russians would invade Ukraine. Small, limited military operation or whatever, okay? And I didn't put enough emphasis on what I should have known, because I've watched Sino-Soviet and Russia-China relations for half a century. I didn't realize that Beijing would acquiesce in this. In other words, I thought they would stick to Westphalia and say, "No, Vladimir, don't do this. This is against our policy." Well, lo and behold, I was wrong. My Chinese analyst colleagues were wrong too. And instead of insisting on Westphalia, Xi Jinping said, and his propaganda or public media said, "Look, every country has core interests. We have them in Taiwan. The Russians have them in Ukraine. And if you're a major power, you do what you can to protect your core interests. We look at each such situation on its own merits, period," end quote. That's what they said for about 6 weeks. And I said to my Chinese analyst colleagues, "This is different. This isn't Westphalia." "Oh, that's right. They still believe in Westphalia." No. Xi didn't give them permission. So anyhow, that's how I come at this. And again, this is worth emphasizing because there has been a tectonic shift. As I've said before, the triangular relationship has become isosceles with China and Russia on the long ends, and we on the short end of the stick.
Thank you so much, Ray, for being with us today. Great pleasure as always.
You're most welcome, Nima. Good luck to you.
Good luck.